I'm taking a look at what I need to do to cut new stringers for the boat. These are the original stringers, just laid back in place. I thought they were rotted so much I wouldn't be able to trust them much as a pattern, but I laid them in here just to see how they would be. And I'm thinking this might be easier than I thought it would be. Right now, as far as you see this piece of cherry here, it's very nice and straight. It's been jointed. There is absolutely no gap there. It's sitting up on that surface there. Down here, it is sitting on this surface. All is one. And we've got 5-point contact. To here, closer to the transom, which you can see has been redone, I've got about a 3/8 of an inch gap, maybe more, maybe 3/8 there, 1/2 inch gap here. Let's look forward, and I'll try and do this one-handed. You see forward, there is a piece of pine there, and it is going across. It's making contact with all three stringers, but the edges, it is lower than, I'll call it that reference line, but if you want to call that a line, it's lower. It would mean that any plywood I lay would be actually feathered or tapered and sitting below into that lip. Whereas down there, the plywood would be sitting on top, and then it would gradually get down until it was buried full thickness. And at that point there, that's merely a kick place for your feet. And there's a tiny bit of floor coming through here, rectangular, so it really doesn't matter too much about the slope, but 1, 2, 3, they all agree. This is where the joint was here that was cut. That actually is flush. So that's how it was originally. And I've got to believe that's pretty close to how it was originally. All three are in agreement. My only question is are these straight? Is there a bow, and does it actually take a dive or not? So I've cut my lumber to 9.5 foot length for the two stringers, the outboard stringers. You can see the best edges are face to face. There's a gap here. They are touching for about the first 6 feet. Not too bad, but I'll have to screw these to a straight edge like plywood and run through the table saw. The stringers themselves are worse than I thought when I laid them face to face. They're really pretty crummy. There they are. They're together at the back. They're up here. So I just sort of go happy medium there. They're touching, not touching here. They're touching the middle 4 feet, and the last little bit they're not touching. So I'm not going to use these for anything except for a rough pattern. Like I say, I'll lay them on here and leave an extra, probably 3/4 of an inch to start, or 1/2 an inch. And this will have to run through the table saw too, with appropriate care, with a guide board to screw to it so that I can straighten it out. I am adding an extra foot to the very end, you can see here, and I'm making it a foot longer so that we'll reach closer to the transom and the bilge well area. Okay, this is the start of my attempts to lay out the stringers. I am at the point of fitting the stringers. I remade the keel. The first one I made turned out to be too warped. I thought it would be okay, but it was warped and twisted such that if you fixed it up here properly to the stub of a keel that I've got, by the time we got down there, it was warped way off, and it just wasn't right. So I remade that. It is fit to the surface underneath, and it is level the way I like it, and everything is seated well. It matches with the sides of the boat. So now the keels, I cut them purposely thick. They're roughly contoured, and they're 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch thick in some areas. I'll show you that in a second. This piece going across here and back there are helping just to hold them in place right now. And you can see there's a little bit of an air gap there, a little bit of an air gap there, half an inch there, maybe 3/4 of an inch here. That indicates on these two stringers, outboard stringers, how much I have to take off. So I'll be scribing these and getting them to fit the hull better. Already did a first iteration of, well, I traced the old stringers, and which were kind of rotten, but gave me a good idea, and I left an extra half inch, and so that's how it works. So you notice on the inside of the hull here, they would be a little longer, and on this side, they're a little shorter because there is some slope to the hull. Okay, the port stringer, I patterned it off the original rotten stringer and added some length, added something like a half inch everywhere, more or less. And I did some initial fitting down at this end, just some cutting. I used a circular saw, it was very rough stuff. I put it back in and done some marking. I'm going to reinterpret those markings here. I just did them in a pencil there. And I'm going to determine, that's up here, so I'm going to go about like so. There's some, I'm going to put a scribe mark there, and it's not equal, it's on the other side, it's more like this. And make sure I'm not too aggressive, but I want to get the job done. Anywhere that I take off too much, that will just mean more epoxy filler based material to bond it to the hull. And after that, I'll be filleting it with the same mix. After it's well set and so on, then I'll go back and fillet it, and while the fillet's fresh, I'll be fiberglassing. But I'm going to use a draw knife. I've got a little spoke shave. That thing doesn't seem to work as quickly, and this is not bad. There are a few knots, but this is pretty straight grain material. And it makes the short work. There's that knot. Man, that is nasty. Yeah. Okay, the iterative process continues. In and out of the boat, marking it, finding the next spot that's hanging up. And one thing I want to show you, it reminds me of when I was a kid. You see this? I hit this knot. What do you do with the knot? Anyhow, I find it's easier actually before you even start doing an area with a draw knife. Knock it out until where you think you're going to end up at. That way you get a good clean draw. So this reminds me when I was a kid. If you ever had warts on your feet, which I haven't had thankfully since I was a kid, man, you could dig them out like this. Oh, great stuff. Great fun. Anyhow, there we would go across it. Boom, it's a little cleaner. I'm just skimming it right now. So that's just a little insight from my childhood and some applicability to rough woodwork when you're shaping something that's got knots. Knots, and I should be raking it on an angle like this. It helps peel the chip off better, not just brute forcing it that way. That is not using one's intelligence. Okay, the way it's settling now, this is my master. This is leveled the way I want it, and the starboard stringer, hey look, it's level, it's across, no gap, it's level there. When I rock this though, it's actually just right there where the new glass is there. It's bearing a little hard on that, so I'm going to relieve a tiny bit of the underside surface there so that settles just a little better, because right now it's rocking a bit. There's some contact in different spots along here and some gaps, but I want it to settle just a hair more. And the same with this there, just where we've got a few extra layers of glass right there. I think it's 3 extra layers where it's tapped into the hull. I will relieve the underside surface there a little bit. Okay, so that's the back end. The front end's got work to do, I'll be honest. Once this back third is done, I'll work on, oops, Oh, this is awkward. I'll work on the front third. If you can look here, you see the stringer, see the gap there to the center keel. It's quite low relative to these stringers. So these stringers have to be shaped underside to drop them down. But we'll get the back first, and then we'll work on the front. So anyhow, I've got here a total of 450 grams approximately of mixed epoxy, and I think that I can stretch it and do both sides. One thing you'll notice, I put some nails. I've got 1, 2, and then 3 nails in each of these, so that I'll be able to flip them over after and do the second side. And, the first coat will soak up most of the epoxy. It'll use the most of it. First coat is done, and this will tack up maybe 12 hours or so. I'll come back and do a second coat.